Hi, I'm Kamal Chilaka. Welcome to my channel where I talk about all things photography. I'm a photographer based out of Chennai, India at the moment. So today I bring to you long-term review of the Leica SL2, a camera which I've owned and used as my primary camera for close to 3 years now, and a shot wide variety of genres with this camera. So I'm in a good position to bring some insights about this camera system to you. So if you're in the market for a new mirrorless camera and you're considering the Leica SL2, you might want to watch this video till the end. So let's jump right in. For those of you who might not be familiar with this camera, so the Leica SL2 is a full frame mirrorless camera from Leica, and it came as a replacement to the original SL, which was a 24 megapixel camera. This camera has a 47 megapixel sensor, has an ISO range up to 50,000. Whether that's usable or not, I'll tell you later on in this video. So this has the updated Maestro 3 processor, which has higher processing power because to process the higher resolution and 4K video, 4K and even up to 5.9K video. And the Leica SL2 is of course part of the L-mount alliance. Leica lenses for the system. You also have other manufacturers such as Panasonic and Sigma, which are part of the L-mount alliance, make very good lenses for this L-mount. So first, let me take you through the pros, of which there are quite a few. So let me start with build quality. Good build quality has always been a hallmark of Leica cameras, and this is no exception. One could argue this has actually taken design, construction, everything for Leica to all new level. I can't think of any camera currently in the market which has better build quality than this camera. It's that good. It is very sturdy, built of very stiff magnesium alloy and aluminium. It's also weather sealed to a rating of IP54, which means it prevents ingress of dust and also can manage a light spray of water as well, say, or you're shooting on the beach or shooting in light drizzle, this camera can handle that. But anything heavier than that, like if really wet conditions, I would strongly recommend for any camera to use body and lens cover, a dedicated body and lens cover, which helps you to protect the camera and shoot in this kind of extreme conditions, even be it extreme dust or extremely wet conditions. So don't take a risk with your camera, but yeah, you have the peace of mind that, with the IP4 rating for this camera, and it's sturdily built. I mean, I think it weighs close to a kilogram. The body alone feels nice and chunky and has a nice solid grip, and it balances fairly well with larger lenses like the Otus lenses and as well as Zeiss Otus lenses and also the Sigma Art lenses. Anything smaller than that would feel light and very easy to handle when mounted to this body. So I've shot with this camera at the beach and waterfronts. So I'm doing portrait shoots at the beach or landscape photography at waterfronts. It could be a lakefront, could be a beachfront, or weather where there's a light drizzle. I've not had any problems with this camera. I'm yet to take it into extremely cold weather, but I shot with this camera in temperatures of up to -12. Not had any issues with that temperatures as well. Of course, most cameras nowadays can perform well in extreme conditions, but this just gives you that extra confidence. This is so built so well and looks like it's built to last for decades, if not more. The second pro of this camera is its elegant and ergonomic design. Just look at that camera. I don't know if you can see from this angle, but I can't think of any camera in the market today that has better design, except maybe its sibling, the Leica SL2. I wish more camera manufacturers would take a cue from Leica and bring us more elegant and ergonomic designs. So look at the layout of the buttons. It's so minimalistic, just a few buttons, but all of them are highly functional and customizable, which really means that you don't really have to go into the menu system for most commonly adjusted settings. And even the menu system, you can do it either from the live view itself or things like autofocus settings, white balance settings, a bunch of things that you need for your day-to-day shooting. And even if you need to dive further down into the actual menu system itself, the menu system is very well laid out. and there are not too many sub menus to go into. It's just mostly 1 or 2 levels at the most, and everything is very intuitive and easy to find and use. I really full marks to Leica for both build quality and the design of this camera. There are really no complaints there. Another thing that I really like about this camera is the viewfinder. So the viewfinder on this camera has got diopter adjustment. It's a 5.76 million dot EVF, and you can choose to use it either at 60 hertz or a 120 hertz refresh rate. In case you want to preserve battery life, you can use it 60 hertz, but you want the best resolution clarity, you can use it 120 hertz. I don't see too much of a difference between in the battery life, so I just always use it at 120 hertz and get the best resolution. The viewfinder is so good that it helps, and I enjoy manual focusing using this viewfinder. And it has this camera has the focus assisting tools such as peaking. So I usually set the zebras to be red, so which I find convenient. And I also the focus assist, where it magnifies the focus point especially when doing manual focusing. It really helps you to get those pinpoint focus on, especially when you're doing portrait photography, on the eyes, and even in general when you're doing either a landscape or a travel photography kind of situation. You can easily focus using the viewfinder, and the LCD screen at the back is also very nice, very contrasty, very sharp. Leica is definitely not skimped in these two areas. Okay, sensor resolution and image quality. The 47 megapixel sensor on this camera is very good. It's not perfect, but it's very good. So let me explain. So the sensor produces fantastic contrast, sharp details, rich colors, and has a fairly wide dynamic range. So I love the images that come out of this camera, especially in good light conditions. I've shot this, I paired this camera with my Zeiss Otus 55mm f1.4 Otus, and I get the image that the combination gives me. I just love that combination, especially for portrait photography and sometimes for street photography. I love that combination. I think that highly resolving lens combined with this camera gives fantastic images, bitingly sharp and highly contrasty, but at the same time they have that medium format quality to it. And even when I shoot with my Sigma Art 85mm Sigma Art f1.4 lens, I'm very happy with the images that come out of this camera. When I'm shooting with my Panasonic SF2405, the colors that come out of the camera are slightly more neutral, which actually technically they might be very good, but they don't have as much character for some reason. But when paired with the Sigma the 12 to 24 mm wide angle zoom lens I have, again, the fantastic colors, contrast, and sharpness that I'm getting on this camera. I think the lesson to be learned is better to pair this camera with lenses which are typically faster lenses, some of the best quality lenses, because the sensor can really resolve so much information. So if you're using it with a lens that might not be the very best, this is definitely going to show those flaws. Of course, you can correct it in post, but I mean, if you really want to have a easy and smart workflow, my suggestion is to pair this with the absolute best lenses you can. And obviously, the best lenses for this camera system are, without doubt, the SL lenses from Leica, but of course, they're very expensive and may not be accessible for everybody. But eventually, I think everybody should at least have one SL lens. And but of course, now you have the new spherical line of prime lenses that Leica has released, which are at a much more affordable price point. So I'm definitely going to check that out myself. But also the Sigma Art lenses are very good. The contemporary, I heard, and I'm not really, even though I've not really tried them, I heard the Sigma contemporary line of lenses are pretty good as well. But if you want the topmost image quality, I think the Sigma Art lenses are what you're looking for. You can also pair it with the Zeiss Otus lenses like I have. They're very good. Of course, you need to adapt them using a Sigma adapter, because those are made only for the Canon EF mount, so you'll have to adapt them for the L mount. And yeah, so try to use them with fast lenses and try to use them with the best lenses that you can, because once you've invested in such a expensive body and high resolving which has a high resolving sensor, which is capable of fantastic detail, colors, and sharpness. There's really no point shooting with a lens which cannot give you the best output for the sensor. Yeah, so the Leica SL2 has IBIS built in, so in-body image stabilization, and it's very good. Actually, being my first mirrorless camera after my last DSLR, which was the Canon 5D Mark IV, which didn't have IBIS, my workflow has changed quite a bit after I've started using this camera. I find I can shoot handheld at much lower shutter speeds as compared to my previous DSLR. I can easily handhold this camera with your typical Mic 24 105 f4 lens, which is also image stabilized. In combination, I find I can even shoot sometimes even up to shutter speeds of up to 1 second. So if I'm shooting a waterfall or something while I'm on a trek, I don't necessarily need to. I just find a little bit of support against either a tree or something like that, and I can pretty much handhold it and get fairly usable images up to 1 second of shutter speed, which is amazing. Cannot think of doing that with a non-image stabilized camera. But for regular use, I'm very comfortable using this camera, the IS with handheld up to 1/15th of a second or 1/130th of a second. So the IBIS reduces the need to carry a tripod for a lot of situations, except for the most demanding situations when you need pinch up images, like when I'm shooting my fine art landscape images where I need to print them to large size and need absolute sharpness. So I use a tripod in those kind of situations. But for casual travel kind of photography, you can easily do it handheld. So that's a big plus for them. Let me come to the cons of the camera. Like any other camera out there, the Leica SL2 also is not perfect. It has a couple of major flaws and a couple of minor flaws, which I'm going to talk about now. The first one, which used to annoy me a lot in the beginning when I started using this camera, was the battery life. Coming from a Canon 5D Mark IV and having used the LP E6, the old and both the new versions of that battery, I was surprised to see how quickly the battery dropped to 50% or lower in this camera. And sometimes even when I'm not using the camera, which is even more surprising. But then you realize it's a mirrorless camera, and even the viewfinder is not optical, it's using AVF, so that definitely has to use more power. So then I realized that yes, mirrorless cameras can't be as efficient with their battery life as typical traditional DSLRs. But then I realized that the Leica SL2, so okay, let me just give you some background. The Leica SL2, I can get through a full day of shooting. I'm doing my travel and landscape kind of photography from morning to from dusk to dawn to dusk. I can easily do that with 2 batteries with some power left over when I'm just doing photography. But when I add a little bit of video to my work, that shooting period definitely drops very quickly and very drastically. So that's the battery life. It's how the video features on this camera and the the burst shooting on this camera are kind of, you don't have access to the system itself disables access to 4K and higher resolution videography, as well as any kind of burst shooting once the battery level drops, and that can be even as high as 70 when the battery is at 70 or 80% when it's using non-Leica lenses, and around 50% when you're using Leica SL lenses. So which is a real bummer, because camera is so capable with its image quality and photography and video features, just because the power delivery system and the battery are not able to cope with providing the support that the rest of the system in this camera requires. That's a shame. I don't even know how it got approved through Leica's quality control system. Yeah, now it makes sense now that the SL2S is out, and you realize Leica had a video-centric camera in the works. Probably why they're not given as much attention to the video capabilities of this camera. But on paper, while it was being marketed, when the SL2S was not available, this camera was touted as a hybrid camera that can do the work of a high resolution photography stills camera, as well as 4K and even 5.9K video work for hybrid shooters. And once you start actually using the camera, you realize the battery does not allow you. So you need to have battery charged 100% or you need to have it connected to the power source, which you can do in the studio, or you need to have the battery grip, like a battery which costs $1,000, with 2 batteries in it to have that time, a video shooting time, be a little extended, or you have to power it through a USB power bank, which none of the solutions of which are really elegant, especially for such an expensive camera. And I think that's a big letdown for this camera, which actually led me to buying a separate camera for my video work, which is the Panasonic S5, lovely little powerful little camera which can do everything this camera can do and more. And the battery life is also pretty good, so I'm pretty happy with that camera. But I really shouldn't have had to buy this camera, because when I had this camera available, it was supposed to be able to do, both photography and videography work. So big con. Like I did promote this camera as having very good low light photography feature capabilities as well, and sadly it's not bad, but it's not great either. So I'm very comfortable using this camera between ISO 100 and 1600 ISO, beyond which I find the noise levels a little too high for me to really use for the type of work that I do. But with the latest news that, with Adobe having released their latest noise reduction features for Lightroom Classic, that's something I need to explore, whether it will be able to handle the high ISO images from this camera. And if it does, then it's kind of that would have given a bit new lease of life to this camera, especially for low light and high ISO work. But for the last 3 years, from my experience with this camera, it's usable up from ISO 100 to 1600 ISO comfortably. Sometimes I've shot with 3200 and 6400 ISOs in a cinch, but definitely I won't think of anything beyond that. Even though theoretically it can go up to 50,000 ISO, that's just in theory, and it's really a gimmick. Rather that it does, it's just limited to say 12,000 ISO, and it does that really well. The fourth con of this camera is the autofocus system itself. It's a little outdated. It has a contrast autofocus system which is slow and sometimes not accurate as well. Don't get me wrong, it's accurate most of the time. It's a little slow compared to phase autofocus systems available in the market now, and I usually get around that by shooting in manual focus mode, especially when I need critical sharp focus of the eyes when I'm doing portrait photography, or for my lens work. Anyway, I use manual focusing techniques. But when I need autofocus thing, and I found this be a little slow, especially if you're trying to do bird photography or any kind of sports photography, the autofocus system is a bit too slow to really be able to. It's not really the best. What I'm trying to say, it's really not the best system out there right now. It's definitely slow. You can still do it. I do use it, but I find that I'm missing a lot of shots because I'm just not fast enough on the autofocus, or not able to enough frames in. Because that brings me, like I mentioned earlier, once battery drops below 78%, camera does not even allow you to do high burst shooting, and that's another problem when using this camera in those kind of situations when you need speed. So it's not the fastest camera out there. It's good in certain conditions, and most of the work I do with this, it's good. But if you need something that, like this is definitely not a Sony Alpha 1 or a Canon R5 or anything in that, or a Canon or an Nikon Z9. This doesn't have the speed of those cameras. But what it really excels is in image quality. It has that Leica look, especially compared to the best lenses, you get fantastic image qualities. The fifth con, which it's gone for some people, for a lot of people, is the cost of entry into this camera system. It's an expensive camera body for the features that it provides, especially when you compare it with the competition today, some Canon, Sony, and Nikon. At $6,000, it's an expensive camera for sure. And especially when you refer to the previous cons that I mentioned about with battery life and video capabilities being tripled because of the battery life and the power draw capabilities, this does make it an expensive camera system to get into, because primarily you're going to be using it for photography work. And you're shooting, and you can shoot video in full HD comfortably, but typically you're not going to buy a modern mirrorless camera today to shoot in full HD, especially looking for a hybrid camera. I'm pretty sure you're looking for 4K capabilities today. And also the cost of the native lenses. It looks like the cost of the Leica native SL lenses just keep going up. When this camera was introduced, between when this camera was introduced, when the original Leica SL was introduced and now, it's been a few years, those lenses have been consistently going up in price, and it's only $5 lenses right now, so very, very expensive. Luckily, you have the option to choose other L-mount lenses from Panasonic, Sigma, and the new range of aspherical lenses from Leica, which are also priced at probably around half the cost of the original SL lenses. So you do have some choice in lenses now at an affordable price points. But if you want to build a system out of, the SL2 body and native SL, the top quality lenses from the SL lineup, it's definitely an expensive proposition. So that brings me to the next segment of this video, which is what is my wish list for a Leica SL3, a theoretical Leica SL3. What exactly does Leica need to fix to make the perfect camera, to improve on this camera and make and progress towards making the best camera that can possibly be made is, one, of course, improve the autofocus system. Leica, please, if you're listening, please ditch this contrast direct autofocus system. Choose a sensor which can allow you to bring in phase detect autofocus. That is, I think, critical in this day and age. To improve the battery life and power delivery system, so that does not limit the access to all the fantastic features built into the Leica SL2. Just improve on that, so that the Leica SL3 has full access and is a much better hybrid camera. The third point is, of course, improve low light and high ISO performance. So I think all these 3 points are pretty much linked to the choice of sensor that Leica has to make for the Leica SL3. They just definitely need to find the right sensor which can give phase detect autofocusing and better low light and high ISO performance, which means probably you need to go, Leica needs to go for a backside illuminated sensor, the likes of which Sony are using in their cameras. And of course, improved battery life, as I mentioned, improved battery life and power delivery. So these are 3 areas that if Leica can improve drastically from what exists on the Leica SL2, I think it's worthwhile camera. They'll be able to bring out a camera which is definitely worth investing in and keep people from moving out of the Leica SL system. So that's it, folks. That was my long-term review of the Leica SL2. Hope you found that useful and interesting. Don't forget to hit the like button if you did, and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to be notified about my upcoming videos, so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And that will also help me with the YouTube algorithm, and I'll be very obliged. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.